So this week we worked on long division with a two-digit divisor. It can be found in your book on pages 17 and 21. The first thing that we're going to do is to do a long division problem with a two-digit divisor that divides evenly. Your answer or your quotient will be a whole number. So our first problem we're going to do is 2,584 divided by 17. Okay, and if you remember from when we did single digit divisor division, long division, we used what we called our DMSB loop, which stood for divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down, right? So what we're going to do on our first step is to divide, right? So let's get a different color here and we will divide. First, we're going to ask how many times 17 goes into 2. Obviously, 17 cannot go into 2, so we have to move on to the next digit. Now we're asking how many times 17 goes into 25, okay? And 17 goes into 25 one time, right? Okay, so we're going to put a 1 up here. And you remember from single digit divisor division that we put the number from our answer above the farthest number to the right that we're working with. So in this case, we're working with the 25. So we're going to put our answer above the 1. Now we're going to multiply. This can be a step that gets kind of confusing for some kids. What I'd like to explain to you is that I'm kind of tipping my multiplication problem upside down, okay? So in this instance, I'm going to be multiplying 1 times 17. Okay, this is really easy. Obviously, if I were to do this over here, 17 times 1 is 17, right? We know anything times 1 is itself. So anyway, but when we're doing, okay, you know what? I'll show you this when we get to a more complicated problem because this is far too easy. 1 times 17 is 17. So we're going to put this down here. Then we're going to do our next step, which is what? To subtract. Okay, so we're going to subtract 17 from 25. First, we're going to borrow from our 20 there. So we're going to add that 10 to our 5, and 15 minus 7 is 8. 1 minus 1 is 0. Our next step is to bring down. We're going to bring down our 8. Okay, and we're going to ask how many times does 17 go into 88? Okay, and 17 goes into 88, how many times do you think? This is an estimate. Again, we're always estimating when we're working with long division. So I would say, if I had to guess, I would think that 17 went into 88 4 times. So I'm going to put a 4 up above my 8 again. And now I'm going to multiply. And here's where maybe I could show it to you better. I'm putting my 17 there and my 4 down here for multiplication. Okay? Now I prefer to do my multiplication right here. It's less work. Okay? And what I'm trying to explain is that I'm kind of tipping upside down my multiplication problem. See here, the 17's up here and the 4 is down here. Over here, my 17's down here and my 4 is up here. Okay? Now the way I would do this is I would say 4 times 7, okay? And 4 times 7 is what? 28. So I'm going to put my 8 here. I'm going to put my plus 2 up here. If I was doing the problem over here to the side, I would say 7 times 4 is 28, and I would put my plus 2 over the 1, which is exactly what I did over here. Okay? Now I'm going to say 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6, and put my number here. If I was doing the problem over here, I would do the same thing. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. Okay, so I got 68 here, I got 68 here. Same thing, right? Okay, so now my next step is to subtract. All right, I'm going to say 8 minus 8 is 0, and 8 minus 6 is 2. Then my next step is to bring down. I'm going to bring down my 4. Okay, and now I'm going to ask, oops, wait a minute, let's look back at this. This number (20) is larger than 17. So what does that mean? Well, that means that my guess was wrong up here, okay? I should have guessed 5 instead of 4 because I was left with more than my divisor. So I need to change this number to a 5, right? And now let's do our multiplication again. So it's going to be 17 times 5 instead of 17 times 4. If I were to do it up here, I would say 5 times 7 is 35, and put my 5 here, and then I would put my plus 3 up here. Okay, so let's cross that out and say plus 3. Okay, now I multiply my 5 times 1 and get 5, plus 3 and get 8. All right. Now when I subtract 8 minus 5, I get 3. Let's just cross this all out, right? I get 3. And then 8 minus 8 is 0. Now I bring down my 4. Okay. Okay. Now I ask how many times 17 goes into 34. Okay. Oh, if I would have done my 17 times 5 over here, 5 times 7 is 35. Put my plus 3 over the 1, just like I did over here. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. So see, I got 85 here, I got 85 here. Same thing, right? Okay, so how many times does 17 go into 34? Well, 17 goes into 34 2 times. Okay, so now we're going to multiply again. 2 times 7 is 14. Put my 4 there and put my plus 1 up here. Okay, 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. If I subtract, I get 0. So my answer is 152. If I would have done my multiplication step over here, 17 times 2, this one right here, 2 times 4 or 2 times 7 is 14. Okay, put my plus 1 over the 1 just like I did here. Okay, 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay, so I've got the same answer, 34 here, 34 here. Okay. All right, let us get rid of that so we don't confuse you. Okay. All right, let's try another one. And hopefully we won't have to change this time. Okay, let's try 4,140 divided by 36. Okay, again, the first step in our DMSB loop is to divide. 36 goes into 4 how many times? None. So again, we have to move over to the next digit. So we are asking how many times 36 goes into 41. 36 goes into 41 one time. Again, I'm putting my number or my answer over the farthest digit to the right that I'm working with. I'm working with 41, so I'm going to put it above the 1. Now I'm going to multiply. Okay, again, upside down multiplication. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. Now my next step in our DMSB loop is to subtract. When I subtract, I'm going to borrow from the 4. Okay, so now I have 11 here. 11 minus 6 is 5. Now my next step is to bring down. I'm going to bring down my 4. 36 goes into 54 how many times? Once. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. Now my next step is to subtract. When I subtract, I have to borrow from the 5 here. So I'm going to put a 4 there. Okay, now I have 14 minus 6, which is 8. And 4 minus 3, which is 1. I'm going to bring down next my 0. How many times does 36 go into 180? I'm going to guess 5 times. Okay. 5 times 6 is 30. Then I'm going to put my plus 3 up here. 5 times 3 is 15. Plus 3 is 18. Then when I subtract, I get 0. Again, if you wanted to, you could have done your multiplication over here. You could have said 36 times 5 instead of doing it upside down over here. You could have done this. 5 times 6 is 30. Put your plus 3 above the 3, which is exactly what I did over here. Then 5 times 3 is 15. Plus 3 is 18. Okay? All right. Let's try one more of these problems that are dividing evenly. Okay? Let's try 588 divided by 28. Okay. First step in our DMSB loop is to divide. I'm going to ask how many times does 28 go into 5? It cannot. Move it over. So now we're going into 58. 28 goes into 58. How many times? Well, let's guess twice. Okay, now we're going to multiply. Again, if you were doing it over here, 28 times 2. Okay, same thing that I'm doing over here. 2 times 8 is 16. 2 times 8 is 16 plus 1 over the 2 plus 1 over the 2. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. Okay, now I subtract. Okay, 8 minus 6 is 2. All right, then I'm going to bring down my 8. Okay, hold on 1 second here. Have to move up our paper a little, huh? Okay, so now I have to ask how many times 28 goes into 28, and we know that would be 1. So now we're going to multiply again. We did this last time, so we don't need that. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 2 is 2. Now we subtract, and we get 0. So our answer is 21. All right. All right, let's move on to a 2-digit divisor problem with a remainder. Okay? All right. Okay, same thing that we've been doing. We're going to use our DMSB loop, right? Let's try one of these problems here. Let's work with 3,264 divided by 51. Okay. First step in our DMSB loop is to divide. So we are going to ask, how many times does 51 go into 32? And while it doesn't go into 3, it doesn't go into 32, it does go into 326. Okay? So 51 goes into 326 how many times? I'm going to guess 6 times. Okay? So now we're going to do our multiplication. Again, you can always do your multiplication to the side if it makes you more comfortable, which would be 51 times 6. Okay? But I think it's easier to do it over here. We're just flipping it upside down. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. Now, if I would have done it over here, 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. Same thing, right? My next step in this problem is to subtract. 6 minus 6 is 0. 2 minus 0 is 2. Okay, and 3 minus 3 is 0. So 20 is less than 51, so I guessed right. Now I'm going to bring down my 4. Okay, so now I'm going to ask, how many times does 51 go into 204? And I am going to guess 4. Okay, let's do our multiplication step again. 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times 5 is 20. Now we do our next step, which is subtracting. We get 0, so our answer is 64. Well, that's very interesting. I thought we were going to have remainders on this one. I guess it really makes no difference, does it? Okay. Let's try another problem. How about, let's see here. 1,708 divided by Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. 17,808 divided by 16. And now the first step is to divide. 16 does not go into 1. 16 goes into 17 how many times? Once. Now we're going to multiply. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, now we're going to subtract. Okay, 17 or 7 minus 6 is 1. Now I'm going to bring down my 8. And I'm going to ask, how many times does 16 go into 18? Well, it goes once. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1. Now we're going to subtract. 8 minus 6 is 2. I'm going to bring down my 0. 16 goes into 20 how many times? Once. 1 times 6 is 0. Oops, sorry, 6. Oh, I'm getting crazy again. 1 times 1 is 1. Now we're going to subtract. Okay. We have to borrow here. 10 minus 6 is 4. We bring down our 8. 16 goes into 48 how many times? Well, let's see. How about 3? Okay, 3 times 6 is 18. Put our plus 1 over here. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4, and we subtract, and our answer is 1,113. Okay, let's try 8. Hold on, let me get another color here. Let's try 88,726 divided by 65. Okay, what's our first step again? Divide, right? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to ask how many times 65 goes into 8. It doesn't, so we're going to move over. 65 goes into 88 how many times? Let's say once. Okay, so we're going to multiply. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 6 is 6. Now we're going to do our subtraction. 8 minus 5 is 3. 8 minus 6 is 2. 23 is smaller than 65, so we did it correctly. Now we're going to bring down our 7. Okay, how many times does 65 go into 237? Let's see. How about 3? Okay, now we're going to multiply. 3 times 5 is 15. We're going to put our plus 1 up above our 6. 3 times 6 is 18. Plus 1 is 19. Again, if we would have done it over here, 65 times 3. 3 times 5 is 15. Okay, put our plus 1 above our 6, just like we did over here. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 1 is 19. Same answer, okay? Alrighty, now we're going to subtract. Okay, first we have to borrow from here. 17 minus 5 is, oops, excuse me, we don't have to borrow yet. I apologize, we have to borrow on the next number. 7 minus 5 is 2. Okay, this is still 3. Sorry about that. Where's my brain? Okay, I have to borrow from the 2. So we have 13 here now. Minus 9 is 4. Okay, Again, 42 is smaller than 65, so we did it correctly. Bring down our 2. 65 goes into 422 how many times? Let's say 6. Okay, 6 times 5 is 30. We're going to put a plus 3 above our 6. Okay, 6 times 6 is 36, plus 3 is 39. Now we're going to subtract. Okay, 2 minus 0 is 2. 2 can't subtract 9, or you cannot take 9 away from 2, so we're going to borrow. Okay, 12 minus 9 is 3. 32 is smaller than 65, so that was correct. Bring down our 6. 326. How many times does 65 go into 326? And let's say 5. Okay. 5 times 5 is 25. We're going to put our plus 2 above our 6. Just like if we would have done it over here, we would have said 65 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. Put our plus 2 above the 6, just like we did here. 5 times 6 is 30, plus 2 is 32. 5 times 6 is 30, plus 2 is 32. Now we subtract. 6 minus 5 is 1. So we have a remainder of 1. So our answer is 1,365 remainder 1. Okay. Okay. Just remember when you're doing long division with 2-digit divisors, well, even when you're doing 1-digit divisors, you're always estimating what your quotient is going to be, what the answers up here in your quotient are going to be. Remember when we did the first problem, I messed that one up. This is always a possibility with long division. Up here, I thought that, well, actually, I messed up here. I did the wrong amount. I estimated a 4 up here in the quotient, and when I multiplied it out, I was left with more than my divisor. Okay? So I had to go back and fix it and make this number larger. Because what was I left with there? 80, no, 68? Yeah. I was left with 68, I believe, and that answer was larger. My subtraction amount was larger than my 17. So I had to go back and put another one up here. Okay? So just remember that you may make an error in judging how many times a number goes into an amount, and you may have to go back and redo that part.